Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with two very special guests. Our first guest today is Dean-Karnazes, and he's here to talk with us about the new Chicken Soup for the Soul book, Running for Good, 101 stories for runners and walkers to get you going. Now, Dean is an ultra-marathoner, and he's teamed up with the world's favorite storyteller, Chicken Soup for the Soul, to bring you 101 real-life stories that will provide motivation, inspiration, and how to advise from everyone from the everyday walker to the extraordinary marathoner. So let's welcome to the show, Dean-Karnazes.
Thanks for having me run by, metaphorically, yeah.
Dean, so my goodness, I mean, you've been running for such a long time. What inspired you to start running?
Well, I have a bit of a checkered past. I used to love to run when I was a little boy. I remember running home from kindergarten, and then I ran competitively in high school, but then I actually hung up my running shoes as a sophomore in high school. I thought running was boring, and I had better things to do with my time. And then I was actually in a bar on my 30th birthday doing, what we do on our 30th birthday. And at midnight, I decided instead of having another round of tequila with my buddies to celebrate, I was going to run 30 miles that night to celebrate my 30th birthday. So I walked out of the bar drunk and ran off into the night. And that night I actually, hobbled, crawled, scratched, and covered 30 miles straight through the night. And decided in the morning I was going to become a runner.
And kind of went from there. So you went, where was the place that you ended up going to?
Well, I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I had a very comfortable corporate job. I had all the perks, I had all the degrees, I had I basically, fulfilled the recipe for happiness in the Western world, a good education, a good job. And I was miserable. I wasn't happy being a business guy. And I was living again in San Francisco at the time. And the bar was in a place called the Marina District, out by the Golden Gate Bridge, actually, in San Francisco. And I knew if I ran to Half Moon Bay, which was that little community along the coastline, that was 30 miles south of San Francisco. So that's where I ran to, Half Moon Bay.
Did your friends think that you'd lost your mind, and were they trying to make sure that you were okay during this journey?
No, I mean, when I made the announcement to them, they looked at me and they said, "What? You're not a runner. You're drunk." And I said, "Yeah, I am, but I'm drunk and I'm still going to do it." And I don't know if they thought I was kidding and just walked back in the bar 5 minutes later, but I walked out. I didn't even own running gear at the time. I mean, thankfully I had these very comfortable silk boxer underwear, on that, served just like running shorts, but they were underwear. And I had they were maybe like gardening shoes, like Reebok gardening shoes of some sort. So I was very ill prepared to do it, but I was drunk. I can think of worse things to do when you've been drinking at night.
For sure, and taking off and doing a run like that's quite different, especially when you look at it and you're deciding, gosh, what is bringing me happiness? And to start running, that's so freeing.
I think that's exactly, you just described it exactly. I felt like I was in a cage, with the door wide open. I had created this life that I thought would be idealistic, and it was a trap. And I just remember that freedom I used to get as a kid. I mean, running home from kindergarten, I remember sitting in class, as a 5-year-old boy in kindergarten, trying to sit still, trying to pay attention, as the teacher instructed. But what 5-year-old boy wants to sit still and pay attention? A 5-year-old boy wants to go wild and not pay attention. And as soon as that bell rang, it was like my freedom. Now I can run home. Now I can be free and wander. And 30 years later, those same feelings manifested.
So when you started to run and decided that was a path for you, wasn't that kind of scary? Because you kind of made a transition from the job you were doing to running.
Oh, it was terrifying. I'll be honest. I mean, let's face it. I was going to walk away from a steady paycheck, I had a company car, I had stock options, I had healthcare benefits, a 401k matching program. I was going to give up all those things to become a runner. And it was terrifying. I thought, how are you going to keep the lights on? You're going to be a homeless runner, it's not going to be easy to do what you're doing. But I thought, you're either going to try it and fail, or you're going to wake up at 50 years old and say, man, I wish I would have done this when I was 30. So I went for it.
Well, we're so glad you did. I mean, your story is so compelling. What were some of the difficulties that you faced when you did certain races and you were doing certain runs?
Well, you have to look at what I'm doing. When you think of a runner, you might think of like an Olympic runner, someone on a track, that's running, round and round circles, or even a marathon runner. And what I was doing was called an ultra marathon. So these were distances beyond a marathon. I was running 100-mile foot races nonstop. And, to finish a 100-mile foot race is incredibly demanding. You try to cover 100 miles on foot in under 24 hours in very tough conditions, usually through the mountains or across the desert. And, if you are able to make it and succeed, you typically get a real nice, belt buckle as a prize. And it doesn't matter if you come in first or you're the final finisher, you get that same belt buckle. And that is part of the appeal. What I loved about the sport is that it was very democratic. Anyone who had, the courage to finish got the same prize, and we were all in it together. But to your point, there was no prize money. So I thought, you're going to have to figure out a way to somehow monetize your passion, or else it's not sustainable.
So what did you decide was a way to monetize what you're doing? Because I know a lot of people are going, gosh, if I want to start running, how do I even do this and make it profitable?
Yeah, it was, some of it happened organically, I'll be honest. I wanted to write a book, as many people aspire to do. It was just something that was on my life list, try skydiving, eat sushi, write a book. So I wrote a book and, kind of checked that off my list. And overnight it became a New York Times bestseller. And I thought, that's incredible. Why are people so interested in some obscure story about a guy running hundreds of miles, out in the wilderness by himself? Like, where's the power in that? People are obviously, this story is resonating with people. So I thought maybe there's something here. So I started doing, book tour talks, motivational talks, and corporations started saying, wow, this guy's pretty inspirational. Let's have him in, and he can talk about some of the lessons from running that translate into business and into life more broadly. So I started doing motivational talks, and then sponsors came to me and said, we'd like you to quote unquote wear test our products. A company called the North Face, that's one of my sponsors. They said, we want to start designing gear and apparel for trail running. Will you help us with that? And I thought, what an ideal job. I mean, it's doing exactly what I love. So the pieces they all kind of came together. And I guess I'm very fortunate in that regard, but I've talked to other people that have done the same thing I've done, and they've said the same thing, that they just followed their passion and it all kind of worked out.
Well, that's so compelling. I mean, really, when we do follow our intuition and our passion, just as you're saying, like doors open and things start to happen. And it's really interesting how it's so different for so many people.
Well, in this day and age, it's more commonplace. I mean, with the gigging economy, it's easier for people to kind of carve out a living, doing what they love. But when I did it, I don't want to date myself. We're talking a couple decades ago, and it was highly unusual for someone to quit a corporate job to start doing something on their own. So it was pretty bold at the time. But again, I'm so thankful I did it.
So you're an ultra marathoner. What does that mean?
Well, in Latin, the term ultra means beyond. So an ultra marathon is anything beyond a marathon. And all marathons are 26.2 miles. So anything beyond that is considered an ultra marathon. So a typical ultra marathon is 50 miles or 100 miles, or sometimes races even further than that. And the first time I heard someone describing an ultramarathon, I scratched the side of my head. I said, hold it, where are the hotels along the way? Or, where are the campgrounds you stop at? And the gentleman went on and just said, no, the starting gun goes off and you run continuous. You run, you wear a headlamp at night so you can see. You run straight through the night and you try to cover 100 miles within 24 hours. And I was fascinated with it. I thought, how can a human being possibly do that? And I knew what it was like to run. I'd run a marathon, and I knew how grueling running one marathon was. He was describing running nearly 4 back-to-back marathons. And I thought, I've got to try this. I just have to, I'll never be the same unless I try it. And I signed up, registered for a 100-mile foot race, and I trained and I finished a 100-mile foot race. And it was the most empowering thing I've ever done because it just shattered all my preconceived notions of what was and what wasn't humanly possible. The realm of possibilities expanded infinitely when I ran 100 miles, and it crossed over to everything I was doing. Not just running, any of my business enterprises and life. There were no more possible, everything was possible at that point because I'd done something so impossible that I proved to myself that I was better than I thought I was and I could go further than I thought I could.
What was the longest race you've run to this point?
How long for this interview? I've done some crazy stuff. So, I once ran 50 marathons in all of the 50 U.S. states in 50 consecutive days, which was an incredible journey, an epic odyssey, I'll call it, because not only did I get to run, in all 50 of the states, the travel and meeting people and having food from all across the country was amazing. So I've done that. I've run 350 miles continuous over the course of 81 hours of running. I've run across America. I've run from LA to New York City one time. I've run across Australia. I've run across Central Asia. I've run across the Sahara Desert. I've run a marathon to the South Pole. I could go on and on and on, but I've done some really crazy adventures over the course of my running career.
So when you tell your friends you're going to see them in a couple days, you're probably running, right?
It's not uncommon. People. I don't own a car. It's crazy. I haven't owned a car for about a decade now, and I just run everywhere.
That's pretty cool. Well, and you talk about these extreme races that you've been in. What is one that really stands out for you?
There's a race called the Badwater Ultramarathon, and it's a 135-mile continuous foot race from Badwater, which is the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere. And the race ends at a place called Mount Whitney, which is the highest point in the contiguous U.S. So Badwater is right in the middle of Death Valley. It's the hottest place on Earth. The highest recorded temperature ever of 134.6 degrees was recorded at Badwater. And this is where you run. So temperatures during the Badwater Ultramarathon routinely exceed 120. There's been years that I've run the race. It's been over 130 degrees. And again, it's a 135-mile continuous foot race. And to run that distance in those temperatures is absolutely grueling. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's so intimidating just to get out of your car in Badwater when the temperature is 125 degrees and think, I'm going to run 135 miles in this sort of heat. But it is the most intense, terrifying race on Earth.
Well, and you have to keep moving so the soles of your shoes don't melt out there.
Well, that's the other thing. When the temperature is above 125 degrees, the asphalt can reach temperatures over 200 degrees. And to your point, you run on the white line because the white line is a little bit cooler than the black asphalt. So if you run on the black asphalt, the soles of your shoes can literally melt. And
Wow.
That's not a good problem to have. The soles of your shoes melting off.
No, not especially with a run like that. My goodness. Well, yeah, I was so excited to hear that you had really partnered with Chicken Soup for the Soul in their new book, Running for Good. Why don't you share a little bit about some of the stories that are in that book with us?
Well, for those listeners that are not familiar with the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, what it is essentially, it's 101 stories from 101 independent contributors. So these are short stories of about 1,200 words. And these are individuals that write about how running has brought good to their life. Some of them talk about, raising money for charity. Some of them talk about, losing hundreds of pounds through running. Some of them talk about the camaraderie and, fellowship they've developed through running. One story is an amazing story about an Army veteran that was suffering from PTSD. And, he was in rehab. He was suffering from all kinds of psychological trauma, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. And his buddy got him running. And now he's completely clean. He's a marathon runner, and he's the happiest guy ever. He has no more reoccurring nightmares. So running kind of did him so much good that it entirely changed the course of his life. And those are the type of stories that are in this book. They're not hardcore stories about guys like me, running hundreds of miles through the wilderness, ultramarathoners. There are a couple of them in there, but a lot of them are just everyday people that have really risen to the occasion and done extraordinary things through running. And the reason I love the Chicken Soup series is, I can tell people you need to run, you need to try running, here's how you do it, here's your running guide, here's your training manual. All that is well and good, but if you don't have the internal fire, that inspiration to actually follow what I'm prescribing, it doesn't, the formula doesn't work. But you start reading this book, and there's just something about the human connection and this empathetic feeling you get toward these people telling their story. It just gives you such motivation and inspiration. You just want to lace up your shoes and get out the door and start running.
Well, I found that it provides a lot of inspiration and just what else is possible if we put our mind to it. Because in running, it's really a mind game at many points.
It is on all levels. And there's a famous 100-mile foot race called the Western States 100-mile 100-mile endurance run. And the first time I did this race, I'll never forget, the race director, as he was preparing his send-off, to start the race, he said, you'll run the first 50 miles with your legs, and you'll run the next 50 miles with your mind. So to your point, it is really about a mental game, running in so many ways.
There's one point, because you've got book trailers out and all this great information in regards to this book and your journey, you talk about embracing the pain. How does someone work through that? Because I think a lot of people, they look at running one marathon and then you're doing ultra marathons. There's a good deal of pain that comes with that. And how do we even embrace that?
I think we start with shifting our mindset. So changing our paradigm on pain. In our society, pain is something that's bad, that you want to alleviate. I mean, if you watch TV, so many of the ads are pharmaceutical companies selling us pain relievers, right? I mean, that's the most common theme I see, that and fast food. But to me, we're missing something if we try to just cover up and take something that helps us avoid the pain. We're missing the full range of human feelings. And I think we thought in Western culture that if we had every convenience available to us, every comfort, we'd be happy. And I think in so many ways, we're so comfortable, we're miserable. There's no struggle in our lives. I mean, we get in our air-conditioned cars, we drive to our air-conditioned office, we take a nice comfortable elevator up, we sit in a climate-controlled desk all day. There really is not a lot of pain and struggle. And to anyone who's a runner, that part of the appeal of running is that you encounter pain, you encounter difficulty and hardship and adversity, and you have to overcome these things. And there's something it has a deeper meaning. Excuse me. It has a more meaningful impact when you're able to overcome pain rather than just trying to avoid it.
I think it just, my goodness, I love your story. I love how you talk about overcoming pain, looking at pain in a different way, and just really kind of following also what makes you happy. And what an inspiration your story is for so many.
I get that a lot, and I'm just a runner. I'm just doing what I love, and I think people find inspiration in me, and that I'm true to myself. I got an MBA. I went to business school. I've got graduate degrees, but I wasn't a business guy. I looked inside and thought, I've got all these degrees, but it's not me. I just love to run, and I think there's just something about someone who's true to themselves that is empowering. And I think I've given a lot of other people permission to follow their dreams.
You most definitely have done that. And while you've been doing these different runs, is there something that you've learned about the communities that you visit when you've done the marathons every day? I mean, that's insane. It's a good insane, but it's insane.
The one thing I've learned, and I've done this globally. So I've been on all 7 continents twice, and I've met tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of other runners across the globe. And I'll tell you what, runners are universally kindred spirits. There's just something about running that unites people. There's so many things in this world that divide us, right? That there's the color of our skin, there's the language that we speak, the God that we worship, our socioeconomic level. All of these things are divisive. When we run, we're united. It's a commonality that all humans share. And when we're running together, everything else melts away, and we are just connecting on a very human level. And it's really beautiful. And that is universal with runners. It doesn't matter if I'm in Uzbekistan, in Latin America, in Europe, it's all the same. Runners are just very universally drawn to each other as kindred spirits.
Well, what a great community to be a part of. So, Dean, if someone's looking to find out more about Running for Good and your other books, because you've written many other books as well, where can they go?
There's this thing called the internet. I don't think you can hide from the internet. I just type my name in a search engine. And someone told me I'm the first. If you type in Dean, I'm the first person. The first thing that pops up is my name. So, yeah, just type in my name, Dean-Karnazes, and I've got a website. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those things. However you want to track me down, that's the best way to do it.
Well, Dean, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to running with you one day.
Well, thank you, Dean. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course, to talk about the new Chicken Soup for the Soul series, Running for Good, 101 stories for runners and walkers to get you going. Again, you can connect with Dean on his website, dean-karnazes.com, for more information. Chicken Soup for the Soul is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. Well, we're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
If not me, then who? This ethos is driving the Travis Manion Foundation to empower veterans and families of fallen heroes to develop character in future generations. In 2007, Marine First Lieutenant Travis Manion was killed in Iraq while saving his wounded teammates. Travis's legacy lives on in the 5 words he spoke before leaving for his final deployment. If not me, then who? Guided by this mantra, veterans continue their service, developing strong relationships in the community, and thrive in their post-military lives. Visit TravisManion.org and ensure the character of our nation's heroes lives on in the next generation. If not me, then who?
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our next special guest, Carol-Novello, and she's here to share with us her new book, Mutual Rescue: How Adopting a Homeless Animal Can Save You Too. Now, Carol is the founder of Mutual Rescue. It's a national initiative that highlights the connection between people and pets in order to inspire and support life-saving efforts in communities across the nation and world. Mutual Rescue's first short film, Eric and Petey, went viral and has been viewed over 100 million times. A former senior software executive at Intuit, Carol earned her MBA from Harvard Business School and is proud to include several rescue animals in her family. So let's welcome to the show, Carol-Novello.
Thanks so much, Marianne. It's a delight to be here.
Yeah, you know, what an honor it is to have you here to talk about not just your book, but the work you do. And gosh, it really has me thinking. You've worked in high tech. Like, what inspired you to make a change to be on the path that you're on right now?
Well, it's interesting. It actually was not a planned change. I actually thought I was going to continue my career in high tech, but I ended up joining the board at Humane Society Silicon Valley. And one thing led to another, and I was asked if I wanted to run the organization. And I've always loved animals, and I felt the mission was making a tremendous impact in the world. And I just decided to jump in with both feet and found myself running an animal shelter.
It must have been very interesting early on as you're making that transition and running the shelter, because coming from high tech, those are two different worlds.
They are two different worlds, and there's more in common than you might think, because a lot of people would say to me, "Oh my gosh, your job must be so fun, you get to play with puppies and kittens all day." And in fact, most of my time is actually spent on people and money that make it possible for us to deliver on our mission of saving animals.
So let's talk about Mutual Rescue. What is that?
Mutual Rescue is a national initiative to change the conversation from people or animals to people and animals. So one of the things that was really interesting when I made this transition from high tech into animal welfare is that people would sometimes say to me, "Why are you helping animals when you could be helping people?" And I thought that was a really curious comment, because I know the role that animals have played in my life. And I've seen firsthand how people's lives are transformed when they adopt a rescue animal. And so I really felt that there was a need to make this a much clearer message and to make it visceral for people. And so decided that I wanted to go out into the community and start telling the story of why helping animals helps people. So it first started out that simply as me doing a presentation in Rotary clubs in the Bay Area on that very topic.
It's pretty interesting, because when you do break it down and you look at the benefits of, owning a pet and having a pet as your, part of your family, just how that transforms everything.
Yeah, it really is amazing. And so what we decided to do, how Mutual Rescue came about from that starting point with that presentation, was I was connected with a creative executive producer, And he suggested that we do a call for stories, and we ask people to submit their stories about how rescuing an animal had saved them and turn them into short films. And so in the story, one of the stories that I've been using out in the community was a story by the name of a man by the name of Eric O'Gray. And he had adopted a dog from our shelter. He was extremely overweight. And his doctor said to him, if you don't, change your lifestyle, you're going to be dead in 5 years. And so he actually went and sought out another doctor. And that doctor's very first prescription was to adopt a shelter dog. And that was the very first film that we made for Mutual Rescue. And it ended up going insanely viral. It's actually now been viewed over 100 million times across various social media platforms around the globe.
That really has to make you really proud as, the person bringing all that together, because it really shows the impact that this kind of connection can have between animals and people.
Yes, it really, I was astounded. I mean, I knew it was a wonderful story, and I was very excited to be able to bring it out into the world, but was really overwhelmed by the response. And the film specifically, we released it on Valentine's Day of 2016, and it ended up getting picked up by SF Gate, and they posted it on their Facebook page. And that one post alone had 35 million views, 200,000 shares, and 50,000 comments. And it ended up being voted by New York Times as the #1 video news story in California in 2016. And from that, success, we were able to attract more funding. We made several more films. We've now released 12 films in total. Collectively, all of those films have been viewed 153 million times across various social media platforms. And so all of that success with the films led to the opportunity to write a book. And what I love about the book is it's not only stories, but it brings in the research and the science. So it actually validates in our head what our hearts already know.
Well, why don't you share some of that research for our listeners? Because I think a lot of times people think, well, gosh, because I've viewed many of the films that you have. I know you have snippets on your website, mutualrescue.org. And I mean, they're heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. I think a lot of times people look at that and go, okay, well, I can feel cuddly about this, but what's the science behind it?
Exactly. Well, what's really interesting, studies show that interacting with a pet releases feel-good biochemicals in our body. So prolactin, oxytocin, serotonin. So those biochemicals help relieve depression. And there's studies that demonstrate that. One that's really fascinating, they had a group of people actually do timed word tests. And they also did it with math. And one group of folks was basically just did the test and that was it. And they measured their heart rate and their blood pressure before and after the test. And then there was another group that was told to think about their animals prior to taking the test. And then another group actually had their animals with them. And the people that were with their animals are told to think about their animals. Their heart rate and their blood pressure did not go up as much. And when it did go up, they recovered more quickly after the test. And interestingly enough, they made fewer errors on the test as well. So it really speaks to how animals can ground us and help us show up in the world in a much more relaxed and calm state.
So overall, when we look at, having a pet that we're incorporating in our lives with someone that's dealing with grief or maybe some kind of PTSD, how does that help?
Well, it does get back to what I mentioned before about the biochemicals in the body. It helps with that. But one of the things that I found that was really fascinating in looking at all of these stories and hearing people talk about them is how much it gives people a purpose. And it gives people a reason to get out of bed in the morning. It helps people feel needed. It's a source of love and affection. And one of the Mutual Rescue films, just when I think that I can't find another story that would make a great film, another one pops up, which is amazing. But one of our earliest Mutual Rescue films was called Josh and Scout. And it was about a veteran soldier who was back in the States, and he'd had a traumatic brain injury when he was overseas and was really struggling with PTSD and all the effects of that. And he'd reached the point where he was ready to commit suicide. And he wrote his goodbye letter. He took a knife out and left it on his desk and went outside in the barracks to smoke what he thought was going to be his last cigarette. And while he was outside, this stray kitten crawled out from under a bush and climbed up into his lap. And it just, melted him in a way that he hadn't expected. And it got him to, shift his thinking and focus on this animal. And, he felt compassion for that kitten, which I think started to elicit compassion for himself. And he went on to start feeding that kitten every day. And it really ended up being a miraculous recovery. And I won't ruin the plot line, but, he really attributes how his life changed because of that cat. And there's a great twist in the storyline too, because they were separated at one point, but found their way back to each other. And it really, I think, speaks to how much we all want to be needed. And more importantly, I think, seen. And we can have that experience with another sentient being that has 4 legs.
Yeah. I mean, that story is just so heart-touching. And again, people can find that on the website. It's really interesting. I think a lot of times having pets involved not only gives that person a reason to go ahead and, like you're saying, wake up and they have responsibility or something to look forward to, but also gives them permission to play.
Yes. It is amazing. I think it's I was just out on a walk this morning and I walked by a couple who was walking their dog, and the dog was so excited to be out for his walk. It was like, look, a squirrel. Oh my gosh, that smell. Oh, isn't life wonderful? And I just, I was in an okay mood when I got up this morning, but that dog just reminded me of being joyful, because there is so much joy in the world, but we have a tendency to train our minds not to see it. And that is one of the most amazing things that I think animals can bring into our life, is to truly appreciate all of the wonderful things that are in the world when there's so much bad news. And we're trained, I think, as human beings, almost to focus on the negative. And animals can help lighten the mood, help us feel more grounded and more playful. And there's a story that I talk about in the book. There was an older woman, her name was Judy, and she adopted a dog, and she just talks about how they have this game where they chase each other around her kitchen island. And that's like one of the highlights and fun things that she does with her day. And I just love that. And what's really interesting is that there's also research that shows that animals in the wild, that play is a natural attribute of animals, and that, elephants will, go sliding down hills that have mud on them and essentially, bump into each other, almost like elephant bowling. And there's just so much that we can learn and remember when we see that play and that joy that comes from the animals that are part of our lives.
I never knew that about elephants. That is way too cute. You hear that and you're like, oh my gosh, I would love to see that.
I know, right?
Yeah. And gosh, we've got so much going on as well. And I know you address this in your book, and I was actually surprised, because when we talk about people going through addictions, a lot of times someone might not think that having, a pet may help with that.
Yeah, that was one of the most surprising things when I started doing the research and really trying to get a handle on it. I mean, first of all, we were seeing stories that were coming through that people were submitting. And then it was like, wow, is there, research around, some of this as well. But what's really interesting is that what some of the research is showing is that one of the causes of addiction is actually a lack of connection. And it makes sense when you think about that aspect of it, that having an animal can create a sense of connection and a sense of purpose, and help you see that you are not alone and you're not isolated, and that there is another source that you can turn to besides the comfort or the hit that you're getting when you engage with when you're going to that addiction to get your fix, so to speak, when you can actually get a sense of comfort and relief by interacting with an animal. And I recently heard the other day that the comedian Ricky Gervais said, "Dogs are my heroine." And and I do think that there's some truth. I think that's, cats and other animals can play that role too, in the context of they release, these feel good chemicals that are far much better for you than other addictions like food or drugs or other things that people turn to help themselves feel better.
Well, it's I feel like your book was really empowering because it gives a lot of stories, gives a lot of information, and also, helps people look at, having animal included as part of their family, how that really can shape things and change things for them.
Yes, it really changes the dynamics. It's not just about the relationship that you have with the animal, but also how that can change the relationships that you have within your family. And it can, create a sense of family. There's, research that also shows that, when you bring an animal into the home, that it does change dynamics, and, kids want to, make sure that the animal is okay. And, parents are going to make sure that their children have an opportunity to, treat one another more nicely because it might upset the dog. And it's amazing how that can happen. But one of the other things that's just really fascinating to me is there's actually research that indicates that when you treat a spouse or a partner the way that you might treat a pet, that it actually can improve your marriage or your partnership. And there's a dynamic where we seem to be more forgiving with our pets' behavior because we know that their intent is not to do harm to us. It's just kind of, who they are. And you're able to separate the behavior from the animal. And research shows that when we have that same approach with our spouses or partners, that those are the marriages that are happiest by far. And so it's interesting that we can, learn from that and understand that by applying some of the things that how we engage with animals, we can apply that to humans, it can change our relationships.
Yeah, I think that's better. You look at this and it's like, gosh, if we can, have that same level of compassion for people that we're around all the time, what a better world it'll be.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that's interesting, and I talk about this, in the book, is that, for me, I was able to connect with my mom through animals, and, we don't have a lot in common. And the one thing that we really do share is a love of animals. And, I've been able to really develop a sense of appreciation and gratitude for the gift that she gave me, which is a love of animals, and how that provides a way for us to connect with one another. And so even when, you have relationships that, may not always be the way that you would like them, animals can be this thread. And, one of my favorite stories growing up is actually, I had a wonderful relationship with my father, but ironically, he didn't really enjoy animals all that much. But we had a cat that came into our life that completely transformed him. And I just, I love my father to begin with, but I love him all that much more just watching how this cat totally melted his heart. And it's kind of a lesson for us all, which is my father, I wouldn't say he hated cats, but he certainly, wasn't crazy about them. But this cat came into our life, and, essentially every Friday night, my dad would go up and listen to Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser. And no one in the family wanted to do that. But this cat, his name was Chester, followed my dad upstairs and hopped up into his lap and would just purr. And so, previously my father would say to me, "Don't kiss the cat. Cats have germs." And one night I walked by, and there was Chester sitting on his lap watching Wall Street Week with my dad. And here was my dad kissing the cat.
Oh, that is too cute.
But I think, to me, there's a bigger picture lesson in all of that, which is, how many of us are categorizing people and putting stereotypes and labels on them, which is exactly what my father was doing with cats. But by having an interaction and relating to a cat as an individual, not as a label, he was, their relationship was transformed and opened up his world and brought so much joy and love that he never would have otherwise experienced. And, when my father passed away when I was in college, and, Chester didn't want to leave the room. And after my father died, Chester would go into his closet and just sit there and wail. I mean, they had an amazing bond. And I just love how animals can give us a new perspective and transform our hearts, really, at the most basic level.
I think all of us have a story where we've had animals come and impact us in a really profound way when we were kids. And a lot of times I think people don't realize, you can still have that really deep connection as adults, incorporating a pet into your family.
Oh, for sure. I mean, one of the things that I really appreciate, in my former life when I worked in high tech, I had been asked to go run a company, a division that the company had bought, and I was running it up in Santa Rosa, which was away from where I currently live and my friends and family. And my cats, I mean, they were my family for the time that I was up there. And, I'd have a rough day and I would just come home and they would be the thing that would ground me and helped me, feel good and give me the strength and the energy that I needed to get up the next day and do it again. And one of the things that's very interesting is, there's research out there that talks about how emotions are contagious. And, I needed to be able to be a positive, confident leader. And my cats helped me do that. And, in turn, that helped create a more positive work environment, and it helped turn the company that we bought around. And I mean, it's amazing. I mean, one of the things I'd love to do a second book where I talk with, business leaders and people that, have done really challenging things in the business world, and the role that animals have played in terms of giving them support to accomplish that.
I think that would be a great book. I'd love to read that.
Well, I will tell you, I mean, one of the things that's interesting is Dave Duffield, who was the co-founder of both PeopleSoft and Workday, so hugely successful in the high-tech space. When he was going through building PeopleSoft, it was so challenging, and he had his dog, Maddie, and he said to her, "If I ever make it, I am going to give back to your kind." And indeed, obviously, those are big companies. And he set up a foundation called Maddie's Fund, which now helps advance animal welfare all across the country. So that's the first story in the book, right? Which would be just how Maddie helped him be successful, and the role and support that she played in helping him achieve what he did.
I love that story. That was a great way to start off. Well, and, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Doggy Day Out program. So what's that all about? Because, I mean, I know people are going to want to be involved in this.
Yes. So Doggy Day Out, and I talk about this in the Mutual Rescue book as well, because there's value, again, for human beings getting out and walking a dog, and there's huge value for shelter dogs to get out of the shelter. So Doggy Day Out is a program whereby people can take a dog out from a local shelter for the afternoon. So it's a low barrier to participation way for people to engage in a shelter with a shelter animal and with shelters in their local community. So if you go to mutualrescue.org, you can, there's a Doggy Day Out tab there, and you can find a directory that lists shelters across the country that have this program. And again, what's so wonderful about it is it's great physical exercise for both the human and for the dog. And it helps relieve stress for both humans and dogs. But also what's so wonderful is that, you may not be in a position to be able to adopt an animal, but you have an opportunity to interact with one and then advocate. We see people all the time. It's like they go on a Doggy Day Out and they take photos and they post those photos on social media, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this dog was amazing. I'm not in a position to be able to adopt, but somebody needs to adopt this animal." And it has really helped make a huge difference. And so we've got shelters all across the country that have implemented this program. We actually put together a toolkit working with a number of the shelters that have this program to put together all of the best practices and make it super easy for other shelters to implement. And one of the earliest shelters to implement it was Fredericksburg SPCA. And they saw a 20% increase in their adoptions because of this program. And I just hear that time and time again. So it's a great opportunity to help save lives, help save animals without having to necessarily adopt if you're not in a position to do that.
Well, it also gives people the opportunity to be with the animal kind of away from the shelter, because that's such a high stress situation anyway for the dogs and cats.
Yeah, it really is a stress reliever. And sometimes people will say, oh my gosh, but doesn't the dog feel sad when he comes back? And research actually shows that the dogs are calmer and more relaxed. I mean, it really does help relieve their stress. Dogs want to be outside. They want to be sniffing and smelling and enjoying the sunshine. And so even Humane Society of Silicon Valley has an amazing facility. We're so fortunate that the community has made it possible for us to have a world-class facility. But, especially for large dogs that need a lot of exercise, getting them out and about helps them release that energy. And then when they're back in their kennel, they're more relaxed, they're more calm, and that helps them present well to future adopters who come in and have more engaged interactions with the dogs when they come visit.
Well, I'm sure it's just good all the way around, for the animals, for the people, and for those adopting. And so I know you also have where different local shelters can use mutual rescue films. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the reasons why we wanted to make Mutual Rescue a national initiative is because these stories are happening all across the country in all kinds of different shelters, rural, city, suburban. And we wanted to make these films available so that local shelters could use them to have community events. They can fundraise, anything that helps bring the attention to their shelter, to their community. So we wanted to create a national initiative that could then be executed and create engagement at the local level. So if shelters are interested and even if you want to do a fundraiser for a local shelter, we can make the films available for that purpose as well. So there's forms on our website if people are interested in doing that. And one of the things that's really, fun is to show the films and then, invite animals and people that have adopted from your own community to tell their own mutual rescue story. There's amazing how many of them are out there.
Oh, I'm sure it's a never-ending supply of stories because, everyone adopts for different reasons and they have these connections with animals. And then, it's just a journey that you have with these really amazing pets.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was doing an interview last week and the gentleman said, oh my gosh, there's somebody you need to talk to. And he connected me with a woman who shared her story of coming back from anorexia and how she literally was praying for something to help her because she didn't know what to do. And she'd been kicked out of her house and was living in a motel room. And she heard this meow one day outside of her hotel room, and this stray kitten was just outside of her motel room door and welcomed the kitten in. And she started feeding and taking care of the kitten, which is what prompted her to start feeding and taking care of herself. And she credits this cat, it's been 5 years now, for turning around her life and making it possible for her to realize that she had value just like that kitten had value. And it just blows me away. Just when I think I can't hear another story that, there's yet another one that is just shows the truly transformative nature of having animals in our lives.
Oh my God, what a great story that is. I mean, my goodness, to go from such a place where you're feeling like you just need help and a kitten shows up. I mean, that can be a little miracle in many ways.
Well, and it's interesting. The woman's name is Carissa, and she named the cat Ellie, which was short for Eleanor, which is answer. She said that the Eleonora, I think, means your prayers are answered, and so that's why she shortened her name to Ellie, because of her prayer was answered, and it showed up in the form of a 4-legged kitten.
I love that. What if people want to get involved in mutual rescue and doggy day out? Where do they go and how do they get involved in those?
Yeah. So if you go to mutualrescue.org, you can learn all about the initiative. You can see all of our films that have been released are available there. The Doggy Day Out section is available, where you can download the toolkit if you want to get a program started at your shelter. You can find the directory, which will list the shelters that have various programs. You can learn more about the book Mutual Rescue: How Adopting a Homeless Animal Can Save You Too, which is also available wherever books are sold, your favorite online retailers or physical bookstores. And then you can also search for shelters that are in your local area where you might be able to volunteer or adopt or donate. You can also look for adoptable animals, and be sure to sign up for our newsletter so you can find out when the next Mutual Rescue films will be released. We've got a few more coming out this fall. And, more than anything, we just encourage people to remember that helping animals does indeed help people too. And that it is a very worthy cause that we hope people will support and engage with to make life not only better for animals, but also for humans too.
If someone goes to the website and they see that their local shelter isn't listed under, the Doggy Day Out program, they can contact the shelter and have them contact you?
Yeah, they can absolutely suggest that they would love to have one in their community. We've got a lot of shelters that have downloaded the toolkit and are still working to get the program implemented. So, we're hoping there's going to be one in every community across the country. That's ultimately what our goal is. But they certainly can inquire at their local shelter and let local shelters know that there's a toolkit that makes it easier to get the program up and running more quickly.
Well, Carol, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. It was really a true delight. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Carol. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about the work that you're doing with Mutual Rescue and, of course, your new book, Mutual Rescue. For more information on Mutual Rescue, you can visit mutualrescue.org and learn how not only can you be involved, but get your shelters close to you involved too. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.